With regards to your property listing. Dear Mrs. H, first, I wanted to thank you for this opportunity. When I first saw your post on Craigslist, it seemed too good to be true. I'm still a little bit unclear as to the circumstances which prompted you to need stewardship kept over your estate, but I am nonetheless ecstatic over the opportunity. Though the property has a few drawbacks, I find myself inexplicably drawn to it, and hope that you will give serious consideration to taking me on as its steward. The realtor who you contracted had mentioned that you made a request that applicants give you a brief description of the property from their perspective, as well as a method of keeping up to date on the state of the property. On first approaching the property, one finds it essentially unassuming, fairly conditional construction for the region, perhaps in need of a new coat of paint, but otherwise unremarkable. The rocking chair on the front porch is the only real notable thing about the house, at least from the street. Its ornate design suggests an expensive taste, while its sturdy construction suggests a discerning eye. To be perfectly honest, I found its color scheme a bit garish. If we proceed from here, I'd rather paint over it before sitting in it again, but that's just a matter of personal preference. You mentioned in your post that your grandfather constructed the house. On entering the threshold, it became immediately clear to me what a unique individual he must have been. The architecture is like none I've ever seen. Grand open archways that tunnel down into twisting, burrowing passages that scarcely pass for hallways. I admit, I was at first dismayed at the total disregard for traditional geometries of architecture. But as I explored the premises, the ingenuity revealed itself. By eschewing the foundational norms of construction, your grandfather created a house where rooms take on an entirely different appearance depending on the point of entry, even the time of day. The nuances of design betray the amount of detail he must have paid towards lighting and perspective. Furthermore, besides an in-depth understanding of aesthetics, the man must have enjoyed a rigorous study of design efficiency. What I assumed was a small house when seen from the street ended up taking me a number of hours to explore fully. By the time I reached the back porch, one of my dogs, Lou, had already had time to explore the woods behind the house, and returned with a bone of some animal to gnaw upon. Her and my other dog George tugged playfully over it for some time as I watched. The sun had long set at this point, and my watch had chosen that particular day to stop working, sometime during my explorations of the property. So without knowing the exact hour, I resigned to give a brief inspection of the yard and be on my way. The forest at the back of the property is profound. The trees grow taller and skinnier than most I've seen in this area, though while pulling myself between them, I couldn't help but note their strength. I'm sure that exploring the forest is outside the range of features you wished me to report on, but I hope that my diligence shows the level of interest I have in your property. What you had described as a small copse must actually be quite extensive, as when I heard George and Lou begin to cry, they sounded quite far off. I once again resigned to a more thorough inspection at a later time, and returned in the direction of their cries. Along my way back, I must have gotten turned around, as I stumbled upon a feature you completely neglected to mention. A beautiful clearing opened out to a calm and inviting fishing pond. At this point, I was sweaty from the hours of exploration, and I wanted badly to wash the dirt and mud off my limbs and face, so I decided to take a quick dip in the clear water. The faint music coming from nearby became so calming while floating over those deep waters that I admit I drifted off for a bit. I awoke the next morning to Lou tugging at my arm, with a whine in her voice and an urgency in her eyes. George stood watch a few feet away, staring resolutely into the trees. The poor things must have been starving. I had neglected to feed them during my exploration. Fortunately, my awakening seemed to put the beasts at ease, and they padded off in what I could only hope was the direction of the property. After some long walk through the woods, they brought me successfully back to the house itself. Even now, observing it from the outside, I found it hard to imagine the twisting, tunneling hallways contained within. I thought to make another pass through the house, run my hand over the strange stone which made up the majority of surfaces, pass my way through the sometimes giant and sometimes tiny apertures once more. at the least to make certain I had relocked the various doors I had used. But before I could enter, Lou and George threw a minor fit. I suppose the lack of food must have got to them, for they both attacked me rather viciously. They blocked my way to the doorway and even pulled me briefly off my feet. No long-term harm was done, and I conceded, circling around the outside of the house to return to my car instead, which seemed to placate them. Still, as the property grew smaller in my rearview mirror, I resolved on the spot to write you this letter of application. I should very dearly like to walk through those strange hallways once more, to nap in those calm waters again. If you consider me a reasonable applicant, I'd like very much to hear back from you as soon as possible. I find myself drawn back to the house, and have even driven by a few times since, just to look upon it. Looking forward to hearing from you.